I, 28F, need some advice about a complicated family situation that's now spilling over into my work life. I've been married to my husband, Anthony, 29M, for 2 years now, but we've been together for 5 years total. Our story started at my friend Sarah's wedding, where I was a bridesmaid and Anthony was a groomsman. The wedding was a beautiful affair at a vineyard just outside the city. I remember feeling a mix of happiness for Sarah and a twinge of envy. I was perpetually single at the time. Little did I know that was about to change. During the reception, I found myself seated next to Anthony at the wedding party table. He had this charming, slightly crooked smile that immediately put me at ease. We started chatting, and I was surprised to find out we had so much in common. We both loved obscure 80s movies. We spent a good hour quoting lines from The Princess Bride and Buckaroo Banzai. We also shared a terrible weakness for puns. By the time he dropped a truly awful grape pun, we were at a vineyard after all, I was literally crying with laughter. As the night went on, we kept finding reasons to talk to each other. When the DJ started playing slow songs, Anthony asked me to dance. I remember how my heart fluttered when he put his hand on my waist. We swayed to the music, talking and laughing, completely oblivious to everyone around us. When the wedding ended, we exchanged numbers, both of us promising to call soon. Our first date was a comedy of errors that somehow turned out perfect. Anthony, trying to impress me, took me to this fancy French restaurant. Neither of us spoke a word of French, so ordering was an adventure. I ended up with some kind of fish dish where the fish's head was still intact, its glassy eye staring accusingly at me. Anthony's plate was even worse, a heap of snails and some kind of green sauce. We took one look at our plates, then at each other, and burst out laughing. The waiter looked scandalized, but we couldn't stop giggling. Finally, Anthony leaned in and whispered, "Want to get out of here and grab a burger?" I nodded enthusiastically, and we made our escape, leaving behind 2 barely touched plates of pretentious food. We ended up at a tiny hole-in-the-wall burger joint. The burgers were greasy, the fries were crispy, and the conversation was fantastic. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, our families, our jobs, our dreams. By the end of the night, I knew there was something special between us. Things moved pretty quickly after that. Within 6 months, we were practically living together. Anthony had a drawer at my place, and half my closet had migrated to his apartment. I knew he was the one when I got really sick with the flu. Instead of keeping his distance, Anthony spent the whole weekend taking care of me. He made homemade chicken soup, kept me supplied with tissues and medicine, and even sat through a marathon of my favorite cheesy rom-coms without a single complaint. When I apologized for being such a mess, he just kissed my forehead and said there was nowhere else he'd rather be. The proposal came about 1.5 years into our relationship. It was low-key and sweet, just like Anthony. We were having a picnic in the park where we had our first kiss. As we were packing up, he pretended to drop something and got down to look for it. When he looked up, he was on one knee, holding out a ring. "I can't imagine my life without you," he said. "Will you marry me?" Of course, I said yes, tears streaming down my face as he slipped the ring on my finger. Everything was perfect. Until I met Anthony's family, especially his older sister Amelia, 32F. From the moment I walked in the door for that first family dinner, I could tell she didn't like me. She greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and a hug that felt more like a vice grip. "So, you're the girl who's stolen my baby brother's heart," she said, her tone just a little too sharp to be friendly. Throughout dinner, Amelia kept making these little digs at me. When I mentioned I worked in marketing, she said, "Oh, that must be interesting. I could never do something so, well, basic, but I'm sure it's fun for you." When I complimented her dress, she replied, "Oh, this old thing? I'm sure you have similar ones. It's so brave of you to wear something so young at your age." Each time she'd follow it up with a little laugh and a "just teasing," but I could feel the venom behind her words. The worst part was, everyone else in Anthony's family seemed to love me. His parents were warm and welcoming, asking me all sorts of questions about my family and my job. His younger brother thought I was hilarious, especially when I started making terrible puns. This only seemed to make Amelia dislike me more. I could see her getting more and more agitated as the night went on, especially when Anthony's mom asked me for my lasagna recipe. After we got engaged, things with Amelia got even worse. At my bridal shower, she gave me a set of cooking utensils with a card that read, "Since you'll need all the help you can get in the kitchen." Then she laughed it off as a joke when she saw my hurt expression. During the wedding planning, she constantly tried to undermine my choices, suggesting that maybe I should choose a different dress style because not everyone can pull off that look, or that we should reconsider our venue because it might be a bit too classy for some of your family members. But Amelia wasn't even the biggest problem. Her husband, Mike, 34M, gave me the creeps from day one. At first, I thought he was just being friendly, but his behavior quickly crossed a line. At Anthony's birthday party, Mike cornered me in the kitchen while I was getting drinks. He leaned in way too close, his breath smelling of beer, and said, "You know, if you ever get bored with Anthony, I could show you what a real man is like." I was so shocked I just mumbled something and ran out of there. Another time at a family barbecue, Mike kept finding excuses to brush up against me or touch my arm. He'd make these gross comments like, "That swimsuit looks great on you. I bet it would look even better on my bedroom floor." I tried to laugh it off and stay away from him, but he was persistent. Once, when I was bending over to get a soda from the cooler, I felt a hand on my lower back. I jerked upright to find Mike standing there, grinning. "Just admiring the view," he said with a wink. The final straw came at Christmas last year. We were all opening gifts, and Mike handed me a small box. Inside was a pair of lacy red underwear. When I looked up at him in horror, he winked and said, "A little something for Anthony? And maybe for me to see later?" I was mortified, and Anthony was furious. He demanded to know what Mike meant by that, but Mike just laughed it off as a harmless joke. That night, I finally broke down and told Anthony everything. All the comments, the touches, the inappropriate behavior. He was angry and immediately confronted Amelia about Mike's behavior. It turned into a huge fight, with Amelia accusing me of lying and trying to break up her marriage. She said I was just jealous of her and trying to turn everyone against her. Mike played innocent, saying I had misunderstood his friendly behavior and that I was blowing things out of proportion. The argument got heated, with Anthony defending me and Amelia defending Mike. It ended with Amelia storming out, dragging Mike behind her and yelling that we were no longer welcome in their home. Since then, Amelia and Mike haven't spoken to us. It's made family gatherings incredibly awkward, but at least I didn't have to deal with Mike's harassment anymore. Or so I thought. Today, I got the shock of my life. I walked into work looking forward to starting a new project when my coworker pulled me aside. "Did you hear?" she whispered. "We have a new department head." My blood ran cold as she continued. "It's Mike. You know, your brother-in-law?" I felt like I was going to be sick. I looked across the office and there he was, smirking at me from the door of what used to be my old boss's office. How could this be happening? How could he be my direct supervisor now? I made it through the day in a daze, trying to avoid Mike as much as possible. When I got home, I collapsed on the couch, my mind racing. Anthony is out of town for work and won't be back for a week. I'm scared to be alone with Mike at work, knowing what he's like and that he has power over me now. I'm also worried about how this will affect things with Anthony's family. Should I quit my job? Try to transfer departments? Report Mike to HR? But what if they don't believe me? It would be my word against his, and he's the new boss. I'm at a loss here, and I could really use some advice. How do I handle this nightmare situation? Update 1. It's been almost a month since my last post, and I wanted to give you all an update on my situation with Mike. First off, thank you to everyone who offered advice and support. Your kind words and suggestions have been a lifeline during this stressful time. I told Anthony about Mike being my new boss as soon as he got back from his work trip. He was just as shocked and worried as I was. We spent hours discussing our options, weighing the pros and cons of each possible course of action. Anthony suggested that I look for a new job if I'm uncomfortable working with Mike. While I appreciate his concern, I'm hesitant to leave. The salary is good, and I've worked hard to get where I am in this company. It doesn't feel fair that I should have to leave because of Mike's inappropriate behavior. For the first few weeks, things at work were tense but manageable. Mike mostly kept our interactions professional, focusing on work-related matters. We had a few team meetings where he outlined his vision for the department. And I have to admit, some of his ideas were actually pretty good. I started to hope that maybe he had finally gotten the message and would leave me alone. But of course, that was too good to be true. Last week, Mike asked me to stay late for a one-on-one meeting about an upcoming project. The office was nearly empty by the time we started, which already made me uncomfortable. As we were wrapping up the work discussion, he suddenly shifted gears and started asking personal questions. He wanted to know how things were going with Anthony, if I was enjoying married life, that sort of thing. His tone was overly familiar, and it made my skin crawl. I told him firmly that I preferred to keep our conversations strictly professional. Mike's face darkened, and he abruptly ended the meeting. As I was gathering my things to leave, he said in a low voice, "You know, you really should learn to be more flexible. It could really help your career." The threat was thinly veiled, and it left me shaken. Since then, Mike has been making my work life miserable. He's been piling on extra tasks, setting unrealistic deadlines, and nitpicking everything I do. Last week, I stayed up until 2 a.m. finishing a report he suddenly needed first thing in the morning. When I handed it in, he barely glanced at it before telling me to redo the whole thing because he didn't like the font I used. No matter how hard I work or how good my results are, He never has a word of praise. In team meetings, he ignores my contributions or talks over me. It's like he's on a mission to break me down. My coworkers have noticed the change too. A few have asked if everything's okay, but I'm too embarrassed to tell them the real reason. What's really got me worried is that our annual performance reviews are coming up soon. I was hoping to get a promotion and a salary raise this year. I've consistently exceeded my targets and taken on additional responsibilities. In any normal situation, I'd be a shoo-in for advancement. But now, everything depends on Mike's evaluation of my work. Given how he's been treating me lately, I'm afraid he'll tank my chances out of spite. My fears were confirmed yesterday when I got a call from Mike late in the evening. I was at home trying to relax after another stressful day when my phone rang. Seeing Mike's name on the caller ID made my stomach churn, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. He didn't even bother with small talk. He just said, "Listen, about that promotion you're hoping for. You can forget about it unless you start being more cooperative." The implication was clear, and it made me feel sick. When I didn't immediately respond, he continued, "You know, I could be a very valuable ally if you just play nice. Think about it." Then he hung up, leaving me feeling dirty and used. I'm disgusted and angry, but also scared. I've worked so hard for this opportunity, and the idea of losing it. Because I won't submit to Mike's harassment is infuriating, but I refuse to let him win. I spent half the night researching my options, looking up labor laws and company policies. After a lot of thought, I've decided to take action. I confided in my colleague, Olivia, about what's been happening. We've been friends since I started at the company, and I trust her completely. She was horrified when I told her everything and immediately offered to help. Together, we've come up with a plan to expose Mike's behavior. We're going to gather evidence of his harassment. Olivia suggested planting a recording device in his office to catch him in the act. It's a risky move, and I'm not even sure if it's legal, but at this point, I feel like I have no choice. If we can get solid proof of his misconduct, we can take it to HR and hopefully put an end to this nightmare. I know some of you might be wondering why I haven't told Anthony about this latest development. The truth is, I'm worried about how he'll react. He's protective of me, and I'm afraid he might confront Mike directly. That could lead to a physical altercation, which would only make things worse. Mike could press charges, and Anthony could get in serious trouble. Plus, it would give Mike an excuse to fire me or make my work life even more hellish. So for now, I'm keeping this between me and Olivia. We're planning to put our plan into action next week, right before the performance reviews start. I'm nervous, but also determined. Mike has gotten away with this behavior for far too long, and it's time someone stood up to him. I'll update again once we've carried out our plan. Wish me luck, and thank you again for all your support. It means more than you know. Update 2. Hey everyone, I'm back with what will hopefully be my final update on this whole Mike situation. A lot has happened since my last post, and I'm still processing it all. After my last update, Olivia and I put our plan into action. For the next few days, I played along with Mike's game. I hated every second of it, but I knew it was necessary to get the evidence we needed. I started being more friendly with him, laughing at his jokes, and generally acting like I was warming up to him. It was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Mike took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. He started getting bolder with his comments and actions. It was clear he thought he had won, that I was finally giving in to his advances. Little did he know, we were recording everything. The big moment came 3 days before the performance reviews were set to start. Mike called me into his office for a private meeting. Olivia and I had planted a small recording device behind a plant on his bookshelf earlier that day. As soon as I walked in, Mike started his chatter. He went on and on about how he could help me climb the ladder of success if I was willing to be a team player. The implication was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then he got really explicit, detailing exactly what he expected from me in exchange for a positive review and promotion. It was revolting, but I managed to keep my cool and get him to repeat his offer clearly for the recording. As soon as I left his office, I met up with Olivia. We retrieved the recording device and listened to make sure we had gotten everything. It was all there, clear as day. We wasted no time in taking the evidence to HR. The HR team took the matter very seriously. They immediately launched an investigation and placed Mike on administrative leave. Over the next week, they interviewed several other employees, and it turned out I wasn't the only one Mike had harassed. Yesterday, we got the news. Mike has been fired. The company is implementing new policies to prevent this kind of abuse in the future, and they're offering counseling services to anyone affected by Mike's behavior. As for me, I not only got the promotion I deserved, but also a formal apology from the company for what I had to endure. Now, onto the family drama side of things. When the news about Mike broke, Anthony's family was initially angry and disbelieving. They thought I had made false accusations to get ahead at work. Anthony's parents called, demanding to know why I was trying to ruin Mike's life. His younger brother sent a text saying he was disappointed in me. It was a tough few days, feeling like I was under attack from all sides. But as more details came out and other victims came forward, most of them came around. Anthony's parents called again, this time to apologize for not believing me earlier about Mike's behavior. They expressed their shock and dismay at his actions and offered their full support. His younger brother sent another text, this one full of apologies and offers to help in any way he could. Even some extended family members reached out to offer their support. The only holdout, unsurprisingly, is Amelia. True to form, Amelia is standing by Mike. She's been on a warpath, posting on social media about how I seduced her husband and then falsely accused him when he rejected me. It's laughable, really, considering we have actual recordings of Mike's behavior. But I guess some people will believe what they want to believe. Amelia has been calling and texting Anthony nonstop, trying to get him to see reason and stand up for his family. She's even threatened to cut ties with him completely if he doesn't denounce me. It's been hard on Anthony, but he's remained steadfast in his support of me. Honestly, though, I don't care what Amelia thinks anymore. I know the truth, and so does everyone who matters. Anthony has been incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal. He told me he's proud of me for standing up for myself and potentially helping other victims in the process. His unwavering support has meant everything to me. As for my job, things are looking up. With Mike gone, the work environment has improved dramatically. My new supervisor is professional and respectful, and I'm excited about the challenges my promotion will bring. My colleagues have been supportive too, with many of them thanking me for having the courage to speak up. I know this experience will have lasting effects on me, and I'm planning to start therapy to process everything that's happened. The company is covering the costs as part of their effort to make amends. I'm also considering joining a support group for workplace harassment survivors. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought, and that standing up for what's right is always worth it, even when it's scary. I've also learned the importance of having a support system. I couldn't have gotten through this without Anthony, Olivia, and all of you. As for Amelia and Mike, I hear through the grapevine that they're moving out of state. Mike is apparently having trouble finding work after being fired for sexual harassment. Part of me feels a twinge of sympathy, but then I remember all the people he hurt, and I know justice has been served. Looking ahead, Anthony and I are focusing on healing and moving forward. We're planning a vacation, just the two of us, to reconnect and relax after all this stress. We're also talking about starting a family soon, something I wasn't sure I was ready for before, but now feels right. Thank you all again for your advice and support throughout this journey. It's been a wild ride, but I'm glad I can end this chapter of my life on a positive note. To anyone out there facing a similar situation, don't be afraid to speak up. You're stronger than you know, and there are people who will support you.